Good afternoon. It's 4:45 here in the UK, and good morning. I understand it's mid-morning where you are in the US.
Yes, it's 10:30. Well, 10:44 in
Okay,
the middle of the U.S.
right. So I'm delighted to be joined by Dennis Millet. Is it Millet? I should have asked you before we
Yes,
recorded.
that's correct.
It's not French with Millet. It's with Dennis Millet in the States, who we will crack on with his writing and be talking about genres. So we shall come to that in a moment. Can you? We start always at the beginning. Can you remember how you got into writing? I know from your biography that it was a passion early on. And if you can remember the first thing you wrote.
Yes, I'm going to steal something from one of your former guests, AJ Hill. He
Mhm.
talked about it and he said that a writer always starts with reading. And I was the same way. From a very young age, I loved to read. From the first through about the fourth grade, we always had bookworms. And these were when you read a book, you wrote your name on it and you stuck it up on the wall. Well, every first parent teacher conference, the teacher would bring up the fact that she thought I was cheating. And my mom always laughed and said, test him. So I've been a reader all my life.
Mm.
Um, the first thing I wrote was an essay for an English class, and I entered it into a contest. I didn't win, but I entered it. And it was a story about a balloon flight.
Okay.
And then I wrote a couple of stories, mainly for my cousin, who is kind of like my brother, things that had happened to us when we were younger. And then I worked construction most of my life, and I retired, and I thought, great, I have time to read more books. And I picked up a couple of new books that had very good reviews on it. And I read through them, and I'm like, I can do better than this. And my wife said, well, do it. So I sat down in front of my computer and knocked out a novel of about 200 pages,
Mm.
went back and read it and thought, this is garbage, and threw it away.
Yeah. Did you
So,
did you literally? I noticed that in your biography. Did you literally throw it away? You
yes,
don't still have it anywhere. Okay,
no, no,
right. But three
it's gone.
day, you kind of
It
think,
was that bad.
yeah. Well, you kind of think
So,
if somebody spends a couple of months writing something that they then deem is rubbish,
no,
it's
this was a
then
couple of
it's
days.
then quite sad, I think, to have spent all that time and then for nothing. I mean, it's not nothing because it's practice, but 3 days
Well,
at least.
this was 2 or 3 days. I
Yeah.
mean, this was. And then so I started writing another one, and I took a little time with it. But then I ran across an old friend. I ran across a book in a used bookstore, and it was Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey.
Mm.
I love that series. So I thought, okay. So I went on, I don't know, one of the book online used booksellers, and I bought the whole series. So for the next 6 months, I read every one of those books. And then I went back and I studied them. I studied how she developed characters, how she moved from scene to scene, how she developed timelines. And I sat down and started writing
Wow.
Children of Quill.
Yeah, brilliant.
Um, this took me, actually only took me about 2 weeks to write. I did everything wrong. I sit down at the computer with absolutely no outline, no nothing,
Mm.
and just started writing a story. And it kind of developed on its own.
Mm.
And I found that I really have a passion for writing. Um, I find that I love it almost as much as I did when I was reading. And you have to see my T-shirt. I love this.
Okay.
I don't know.
Fear of running out of books. I love it. And I love the one we were talking about dogs before the recording. You have another one. Is it dogs, books, and so coffee?
Yes.
Yes, in your
Yes.
biography. Yeah, I can. Apart from the
Yeah.
coffee, I'm more of a tea drinker. But yes, I can relate to that.
So that's kind of how I got started writing,
Mm,
and it's been very good for me because I was always a very active person, and being retired, I had a lot of time to read, but there's more to life than reading. Not much
mm,
more, but a little bit more.
yeah, a little bit more to than reading and writing, perhaps.
Yes.
To walking your dogs and spending time with family. It's
Yes.
interesting that you say how you got started, because it tends to be one of two ways. Either somebody has an idea, or they're reading books and thinking, well, there's nothing out there that I want to read, so I write what I want to read. So it's filling, for theory, filling a gap in the market. But most people, well, probably about half, say, oh, they read something and think I can do better than this. So
I would say
often
that's
happens.
my case.
Yeah. So tell us more about your genre, because obviously Anne McCaffrey with her dragons, as mentioned in your
It's
biography, is sci-fi fantasy. Your
yes, it's
interest,
more sci-fi adventure.
right?
Um, the basically the Quill are an ancient race that like to stay in the background.
Hmm.
So the introduction is mainly about the Quill and telling you all about it. And then they don't really show up too much in the book. You're always aware of them, but they don't really, they tend to stay in the background.
Hmm.
And this story is about the prophets, the first people that were brought up. Um, and these people go back and they rescue basically people from bad situations, mainly children, unwanted babies, things like that. They
Mm.
go into war areas and rescue refugees. There is an unwed mother center in the U.S. You know, that kind of thing. And that's how they populate the generational ship that is
Mm.
going to take them to their new home. I wrote this book with the intention of maybe making it into a sequel or
Mm.
a series, but
Mm.
I feel the book is good enough that it can stand alone. So, of course, I'm biased. I wrote it.
Well, yes, you're the best person to know. It's like when if you're working with a publisher, nobody can know the book, even the editor, that edits your book. Nobody can know your book and the ideas behind it, because see, when we're researching or we're fleshing out our characters, there's a lot in a book that you don't put in. So you will know your world better than anybody else, even an editor who's been through it half a dozen times. There'll be aspects to it that you haven't included, but you know because this is your world.
That I would agree with that 100%.
Mm.
Um, one of the characters in here, I love all my characters, but one of them is sassy, and she is sassy, and she doesn't take anything from anybody. And I really had a lot of fun writing her. And so
Is she your mate? Because we love sassy, but I'm slightly biased being female. We love sassy, especially female characters. Is she the main character? I know we'll come back
not
again and talk about your books, but
not exactly. Um,
right.
the book starts out with three main, well, let's call them families. There was Wu Chang, and he's from North Korea. He's married with two daughters.
Hmm.
And then there was Jorge and Melinda. They were married. He was part of a family of farmers. He had three brothers and his mom and dad. And then there's Vladimir. And Vladimir is an old um, communist politician that is saying things that he shouldn't be saying, and they want to silence him. So
Right.
they take him up. Vladimir goes back and gets his housekeeper, who he didn't realize, but that he's loved for a long time, and they become the leaders or the first prophets.
Okay.
And then following, there are another 4 sets of prophets of husband and wife.
Mm.
And so I don't want to give too much away, but
No, no, I was about to,
the,
yeah, say don't
those are
plot
the main
spoil, but
characters.
okay. It's interesting because you say that you kind of think that this book is, I mean, yes, every book in a series should be a standalone anyway, that you can read it in theory in any order. Um, but I always like the thought of having hello dogs, of having minor characters coming back at some point. So the fact that you've got sassy, the sassy character, kind of like to think maybe if you're done with your trilogy. I'm not telling you to what to write here, but I like the idea. It seems a shame, I think, with standalones that that you get to know these characters, and then that's it. You move on to something else.
Well,
Perhaps after the next
exactly.
trilogy, you might come back to her and give her.
Well, my idea, if I continue this into a series, is the first one was Escape. The next one will be Journey. And
Mm,
then the third one will be Final Destination.
right,
So the next one, if I do this, the next one will cover a period of a couple of 100 years
right.
because it takes a while to get there. And
Hmm.
then the last one will be when they land on the new home and some of the challenges and things that they do.
Okay,
So, but
okay.
I have a couple other projects going on too. So,
Yeah, I'm the same with some of mine because um, up there. I always get this wrong. I've got the right hand this time. Usually I'm going like this, which is
yeah.
because it's all back to front.
Oh, you got it right.
This one of these, that's a two in one. That one there. Um, After Jessica, I really love. There's a quite a naughty character in that. He's a kind of right hand man for a fairly devious guy, and I loved writing him, and I would like to do something with him. So I think it's nice if you've created this world to do something else, especially with minor characters.
Yes. I love, um, I love John Sanford. I started out reading the Prey series when
Hmm.
he only had about 6 or 7 of them out. And I love the way he's developed this because the protagonist, Lucas Davenport, was a bachelor that played the field and he was a good detective. He had developed games, so he had money.
Mm.
And then he met his wife. And when he met his wife, he settled down and become a very responsible husband.
Mm.
Then he had a case where there was like 11 or 12-year-old girl that her mother was killed. So he adopted her.
Mm.
And then he had another guy that worked with him every once in a while named Virgil Flowers. Well, now there are 3 series: Lucas
Ah,
Davenport,
right.
Virgil Flowers, and Letty Davenport. So
Ah,
he has developed each one of these characters
mm.
into their own series.
Spin-offs.
There's another one, a guy by the name of Kid, that he did 1 or 2, and I'd like for him to develop him because he's very interesting. He's an artist, and his wife is a jewel thief. So
Ah,
I'd like to see him develop that.
yeah. Yeah, I love that you've got what you call the sassy, the feisty characters who female characters have got some guts. I think it's all too easy in some things to have the female as a sidekick and not doing very much.
I I think that influence comes from well, I know where the name comes from, but I think it comes from Elizabeth Moon and Anne McCaffrey's writings
Mm,
because they always had strong female characters.
right.
And one of my favorite was Sassenach of Generation Warriors. And again, it's great. I could spend hours talking about that
Yeah,
series,
yeah.
but
Yeah, my
they have one woman that is in the regular time series, and her great grandmother is put into deep sleep for like 60, 70, 80 years at a time.
Mm,
And she ends up being 165 years older than she looks.
right. Wow.
So that interesting concept.
Yes, absolutely. No, my husband reads sci-fi, more sci-fi than fantasy, but I think he's read all of Anne McCaffrey. He's read pretty much. We've known him since he was
Yeah.
16, and he's always had rows and rows of books of all sorts. I think Anne McCaffrey, he's gone more sci-fi. He used to be fantasy, more sci-fi than fantasy these days. But
Yeah. Another one that,
um,
that really kind of influenced me was David Eddings
oh
and the
yes,
Bell Garrett series.
right,
Um, the first set of books followed Garin when he was a young man or a boy up to, him getting married and taking over as king and all of that.
sure.
The second one was when Garin was older and he had had a son and they kidnapped his son. And the second set of books is him going after his son.
Mm,
And David Eddings wrote in one of them that he really wanted to continue and write Garin as a young man rather than a boy up to adulthood.
sure.
So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That's another series I
So
like.
now you're retired, do you write all the time, fitted in with family, and because you've
Um,
written
yeah,
so much in such a short amount of time, you're obviously able to type. You
yes.
presumably you go on the keyboard rather than handwriting, or
The last, I would say, the last 3 to 4 weeks, all of my time has been spent on marketing
yeah,
Children of Quill.
right,
I will tell you the writing, that's simple, that's easy.
yeah,
The
right,
marketing, that's a different story.
yeah,
The one piece of advice I could give to any new writer is find a good book promoter and let them do what they do
yeah,
best.
yeah,
Um, I had some really wild experiences when I was trying to promote my book.
mm,
I heard about TikTok. So I thought,
okay,
great, that's what I'll do.
yep.
Nobody told me there was a cesspool to TikTok.
I'm yet to find that, but I found it on
You don't
Facebook.
want to.
I spend more time blocking these marketeers
Yes.
than I do actually reading interesting posts.
Let's, let's just say I seen things on there that would make a sailor blush with shame and leave it
Right.
at that.
Yeah.
That's when I decided I needed help.
Right.
And I got a hold of a wonderful woman. Her name is Charlotte Davis.
Okay.
And she has taken over all my marketing.
Hmm.
So I tell everybody now, she does the marketing, I write the books. I don't
Okay.
tell her how to market. She
Yeah.
doesn't tell me how to write books.
Right. That sounds
And
like a perfect partnership.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
working out very well. I'm very,
Good.
very,
Good.
but
Brilliant. Well, I shall after we've recorded, do pop her details on an email to me, and I'll add them in because we so many people are going to be looking for good marketing, ladies.
there were,
Oh,
yeah. And when I started posting on Facebook and Facebook groups. I started getting a lot of response to that. And at first I was like, oh, great, this is great. And then I realized every single one of them had something to sell me.
yeah. An
Some of them
agenda.
were, some of them had a really good approach. And it was
Mhm.
like, man, I like talking to this guy. Some of them were so upfront and blatant that I didn't even respond.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I found Charlotte. I talked to her a little bit. I did some research. And the one thing I kind of hesitated was she was a little young. But then I
Okay.
got to thinking, this is the computer age. My son is the same age as her, and he is
Mm.
100 times better on the computer than I am.
Right.
So I took a chance, and I'm very glad I did.
Yeah. Oh, good. That is brilliant. It's lovely to have a success story because there are so many out there. It's so difficult to find somebody you can rely on, and most people are word of mouth.
It is
recommendations. Because
the
every day I see somebody on Facebook, please, and now people have got wise to it. They'll say, "Oh, can you recommend somebody to help me with my marketing?" No, nobody contact me directly, and people just pile in saying, "Oh, I can help you," or "I've DM'd you,
yes,
direct messaged you," and you just think, no.
yes. And
I
the one thing that I have found, and this was when I was trying to get myself out of TikTok, is you never know if these people are real or not.
no, no.
I mean,
There's
I- you send them money and then all of a sudden you never see them again.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's an interesting picture. I've seen it a couple of times on Facebook, where there's an Asian looking. I don't know how this is PC, Oriental, Chinese, perhaps, lady, Korean maybe, with a literally a bank of at least probably 100, 200 phones, mobile phones, all on sort of have you have book displays at an angle, and she's sitting there in a comfy chair like this, and she's obviously running all these different scams,
Yeah.
and it's they've got you can't see it, but they obviously have they know what they're doing. Somebody says something and they know exactly how to
Yeah.
reply. And unfortunately, when you see these things like show us your book covers, um, there are a few of us who have things I've spotted and adopted where they're warning people, public notice,
Hmm.
warning people not to fall for it. And so many people do. People are showing their book covers to people that we know it's clear don't have the best of intentions. So it's lovely hearing a success story. Let's move to
It
your
is very
cover.
sad.
Can you show us your book cover again and talk us through how you got this cover?
Um,
And it's very similar on the back, isn't it? It goes all the way round, the
yeah,
wrap around, the yellow and black on the
yes.
back. Hmm.
The one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of the newer books coming out are kind of like flat colors. They're not
Okay,
real shiny and they're kind of muted and very simplistic.
right.
And so I kind of looked at that and I thought, okay, I want two very contrasting colors, and
Mm,
then I'll put the title right over the top of it. And so I got to playing and I come up with yellow and black. So
mm,
I called my cousin who's a graphic designer and told her, say, hey, this is what I want. And she actually is the one that added the barbed wire, which I
hmm.
think is a fantastic element.
It's a nice touch, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
yeah, and that's it.
Really,
Um,
really.
I think I got very lucky because I've had a lot of compliments on the cover,
Mm,
and you can't, the old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover. We do every day.
yeah.
If you see a cover you don't like, you're not going to pick that book up.
No, no, and especially because they're so tiny, you literally see
Yeah.
them about the size of a picture postage stamp.
Yes.
And if you're looking at the Amazon, even if it's not the top 100, obviously they've done well already, then you've got a gallery of you've just searched for, I don't know, sci-fi fantasy novel about a different planet or something. And then you've got all these books to choose from. It's going to be the book cover that attracts you. You then click to read the blurb, and if you don't get past the cover, you're not going to read the blurb.
Well, the other thing I wanted to get away from, and this was very true when I was growing up, and I haven't really got into it much in the last 20 years because I was busy with life. But it used to be that every science fiction book had a very lurid cover. They
Right.
had some woman with, a bikini on holding a sword or something like that. It was suggestive. It wasn't,
Right.
it wasn't out of place. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It sex sells and they were selling. I didn't want to do that. And my sister read the book, and one of her comments, and I really took it to heart, was the one thing that she really liked about the book is there wasn't any explicit sex scenes in the book. I mean, there is romance that happened in the book, but I don't go into lurid detail. I don't think that's necessary. I would like to keep this to where teenagers could read it. So I just didn't do that. And like I say, that was what she liked most about the book.
Yeah. I think sometimes people put things in, writers put things in because they think people want to read it rather than what they want to write.
I think you're right. I know one of the things that, like, I stole this from John Sanford. His character, Virgil Flowers, is trying to become a novelist, and he's having a conversation with somebody, and they said, "You know what really slows down the flow of books?" And he says, "What?" She says, "A sex scene.
Right.
Just don't put sex scenes in there.
Yeah.
Or if you do, make them really hot. But
Yeah.
you're going along all this action, then all of a sudden you stop and you go into the bedroom. It just doesn't work." So I thought,
A lot of it depends, doesn't it, on
if it
the
doesn't work, don't
genre
put it
and
in.
the plot. Yeah.
Yeah,
I just
that's
close the
true.
door. Close the door, leave them to it, and move on.
Yep.
Yeah. Unless you're writing erotica. I was chatting to Lucy Felthouse, and she writes erotica. So hers was very much, she writes very little where it ends at the door. But that's what she writes. So it's
And that's
expected.
perfectly
It's
fine
what
for that genre.
it's all reader expectation. You know, if you're writing a romance or you know, where
Yes.
the majority of the book is romance, then
Yes.
that's what the readers are going to expect.
I took kind of a little bit different approach in my next project. It's called Twins Double Trouble.
Okay.
And this is uh, just say a bad organization fertilized two sets of twins, and then had women carry them to term. They were born a couple of days apart. The whole reason they were born was to experiment on. And after they were born, they were injected. At 6 months, they were injected, and at a year, they were injected. Well, when they were injected a year, they kind of went in a coma. They got rescued, and a doctor and her husband adopted them and raised them. Well, the experiment was try to give them telekinetic powers, and it worked.
Okay.
So, but one of the side things was they had absolutely no sex drive
Right.
until they met their soulmate.
Aha.
And it just kind of a weird twist. I thought I'd throw it in there.
Is this the first in your trilogy? Because in your biography it says you're going next. Your next publications will be a trilogy.
Yes.
Is this something?
The next one is going to be Mosquito.
Right.
And the first
Yes.
one is First Strike.
Mm-hmm.
The second one will be Epidemic. And the third one will be Aftermath.
Right.
And the first book is about Sam. He's married. They're expecting a son. And the cellist, a civilization that Earth is at war with, staged a terrorist attack and killed his wife and son. It devastates him. So he goes in, and his commander tells him, says, "Hey, I got something that will help you." And he says, "No, you don't." He said, "Yeah, I do. How about go, taking care of the people that did this to you?" And he's like, "Well, okay." So he goes in and is surgically altered to look like a cellist.
Okay.
They send him to cellist by himself. And he pretty much wrecks the whole planet by himself in the first one. Okay. What it does, it debilitates the government enough to where a revolutionary force can actually gain ground. So the second one is going to be about the revolution. And I was really impressed when I was growing up with Martin Luther King. I grew up in that whole area. I was like 8 or 9 when he was assassinated. And the one thing that I always admired about him was his stance on violence, his nonviolent protest. And the same thing with Gandhi. So I'm going to kind of use that as the revolutionary force.
Mm.
And they're going to be named one thing. I haven't quite decided yet. And then you have the mosquito gang. The mosquito gang is Sam. And he's going to take care of any violence that needs to be taken care of. But to all appearances, they're going to be two separate groups. And then the third one is about everything that happens after you win the revolution and what kind of infighting you're going to have. That kind of drew my inspiration from Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin. That whole thing.
Okay.
So that's my trilogy.
Right. That's interesting because I often say to my husband, I don't know if I say I'm a simplist, but I try to think that I'm a half glass full person. And I just think wars are we've had wars since the year dot, so there will
Yeah.
always be them. But I just think how nice it would be if everybody just got along with everybody, and everybody was nice to everybody. I noticed a post on Facebook this morning where a lady was new to one of the many Facebook groups, and she said, "Oh, I joined this because I thought it'd be supportive, and I was sharing the news of my first book, and some people have been lovely, but other people have been so sarcastic, and it's literally it's just you just feel sad for her." Because
Yes.
she's got this new baby that she wants to share with everybody, and there'll always be you have to have a very thick skin anyway to be a writer. If you,
Yes.
I stopped reading my reviews a long time ago, um, but you catch one every now and then, and or just you just think just be nice to everybody.
Well, I have a theory or a philosophy, if you want.
Mm,
I don't care if anybody reads my books. I wrote them for me, and
mm,
I am more than happy to share them. And it'd be nice if they brought some money in, but
yeah,
I wrote them for me.
yeah,
I wrote them because that's a story I want to read.
mm,
And you know, I told you I alluded earlier to a cousin that's very successful. We
mm,
both started out in kind of lower middle income families. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich by any means.
mm,
And about at the end of high school, we kind of went our separate ways. Tom chased money. I chased experiences.
mm,
Today, Tom is a multimillionaire.
mm.
I am not. I have my house. I have it paid for, but I live, you know,
Within your
check to check
means. Yeah,
within my means.
yeah, us too.
But I have a million stories.
Right,
Um, I watched every space shuttle launch from Florida until the Challenger exploded.
right,
That day made me so sick. I never wanted to watch another one, and I never
really.
have.
Wow.
I I watched the Apollo landing with my dad when I was 9 years old. He told
Yeah,
me, "You better watch this. This is history being
history.
made."
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I've seen the sun come up in the east and over the ocean, and
Mm,
I've seen the green flash on the Pacific Ocean as the sun goes down.
mm,
I, you know, can't take the money with you, so you
no,
might as well have
no.
a good time while you're here.
Exactly. Well, I've always been an avid reader. I blame Stephen King for me wearing glasses because I was under the duvet and with a torch when I was a teenager reading his really thick books. And and I came to realize that I wanted to be a writer when in my late 30s. And I thought, well, I can't really write anything. I haven't lived a life. I've just had a very normal upbringing, and I went to work and came home again, and didn't really do anything write worthy. But then we watch television and we read the newspaper, and and it doesn't take much to. I'm sure you're the same. It doesn't take much to get an idea. I can literally just be given a
Yeah.
word and come up with
Well,
something. And if I'm out with the dogs and I there's an argument going on, then I'll look as if I'm pausing my earphones, but I'm actually as if I'm turning the music up, but I'm actually pausing it because I want to know what they're arguing about.
Yeah.
Makes us very nosy, doesn't it? As writers, we're the 2-year-old child who goes, yes, but why? Yes, but why? I don't know if you're the same. You want to know everything about everything.
I I've been like that. I hated high school, but I
Mm,
come to realize now it was because I was so bored. I had enough
right.
credits to graduate when I was when I finished the 11th grade. I did not
Mm,
go a single day to my 12th grade year and still
yeah.
graduated. I
Yeah.
I had all the credits I needed, um, but I hated it
Mm,
until I went back to school. Um, I herniated a disc in my back, and so I had to get out of construction. So I went into the medical field, and I found I loved going to school. If I
mm,
could have made money going to school, that's what I would have done.
yeah.
But I spent the next 12 years in working in hospitals, mainly in Las Vegas,
Mm,
and I got so sick of money being more important than people. I told my boss, I said, look, I'd rather go dig ditches. I ain't doing this no
yeah.
more. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
The very next job I had was running a water plant, and that's what I did is I went out and I dug ditches to fix leaks.
Mm.
So be careful what you ask for.
Right. Yes. No, I think I've found my even if I don't earn another penny from my writing, because I like you, I write to be read. I write for myself because I write what the saying is to write to market. Um, but and you have to know really what people want. But there will always be a market for every kind of book. 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
So you have to write what
Well,
thrills you,
one
what
thing,
you
and
love.
again, I this is for newer writers. The one thing that I have found, and I'm hoping to cash in on, is it really, and I hate to say this, but it really is not so much about the quality of the book
Mm,
as the quality of the marketing,
right.
because that you have to get that book in front of people for them to know.
Mm,
And I have read some stuff that really was not very good
mm,
that sold a lot of books because they had a great marketing campaign.
yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
if you have a
Well,
good book and a great
yeah,
marketing campaign,
yeah. You're
you've
on a
got a
winner.
home run.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
they
absolutely.
are
Well, Fifty
so
Shades
important
was,
with marketing.
yeah, 50 Shades was word of mouth. Once it blew up and everybody was talking
Yeah,
about it. And I've never read it, but
I
yeah,
haven't either.
it's
I have no desire to.
no, myself, no, me too. But some writers will say that J.K. Rowling and Dan Brown aren't particularly good writers, but they tell a good story, and that's really ultimately what it's all about, isn't it?
It is,
Yeah.
and it's hard to argue with J.K. Rowling's.
Mm,
That it was a good story. It made her tons of money.
mm,
They made what 8 or 9 movies out of it.
mm,
How much more successful do you want to be?
yeah.
I don't care
Yeah.
if she's a good writer or not.
Yeah.
She's successful, and
Yes.
I think she's
And
a good writer. I
yeah,
enjoyed
she
this.
came from nothing, I think. So
Yeah,
you have to admire her, and she plotted it all months, years in advance. She knew where she was going with it. But I get the impression you're a pantser as well. You get an idea and run by the seat of your pants. As I
pretty
am,
much.
I started off
Yeah.
that way anyway. I'm plotting a bit more now because it helps me get
To
through the
me, it was
parts.
I was being lazy because it was
Right.
like, why am I plotting this when I could just write the story?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
and as I'm doing, especially with mosquito, I understand more the importance because I have several characters and I find myself having to go back and say, okay, now exactly what did I name this character?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm starting to understand the importance of having, you know, at least a basic outline to know
Mm.
where you're going.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
yeah,
I
pretty
think
much
if
seat of the
if
pants.
Either because when I'm editing for somebody else, then I will the first sweep I do is I'm cataloging. So I'm cataloging who the characters are, what the locations are, what happens in each, just literally a
Yeah.
paragraph in each chapter, so that I can go back and just double check that everything flows properly and
Yeah.
is correct. That the ages, I do a ages table as well, a years table, and that everything is correct. And I think you can do it one of two ways. You can either pants and create that as you go, or create it ahead of time. But really, however much you plot, that I think the thrill of writing is not knowing what's going to come out. Even if you think, right, this is A, M, and Z, and you don't know the letters in between. Um, I it would surprise me if even the likes of Frederick Forsyth, where they supposedly he writes 300-page outlines, takes a year writing a 300-page outline for his book, and then he writes. It would surprise me if there's nothing that comes out that he wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
Otherwise, where's the joy in all
Yeah.
you're doing
I
is, yes, you're
agree.
creating this formula,
And
and then you're writing another formula,
I
based on
think
that.
that's I think that's where I get the joy in writing is
Mm,
because when you pick up a new book, you have no idea what the ending's going to be.
no.
And when I sit down in front of the typewriter and start a book, I have no idea where it's going.
No.
And to me, that's the joy of it.
Yeah.
And I found that with writing, I can do anything I want.
Yeah.
The character that I'm reading, in a book by somebody else, they
Mm,
always turn left. Well, my character might want to turn right once in a while.
yeah. Plus, you're
So
creating a whole new world. You're
yes,
not basing it in where you are or in a factual place. Um, so you can do whatever you like, which is wonderful.
yes. The one thing I noticed though is authors tend to write about the area they're from.
Hmm.
Where do most of Stephen King's stories take place?
Maine,
Hmm.
in Maine. Yeah.
Where do most of Dean Koontz's stories take place?
I haven't read his, so I couldn't tell you.
California.
I, okay.
Yeah.
I should know because
Um,
he's popular enough, but
yeah.
yeah, no, I haven't read his.
Um, John Sanford, his was based basically out of Minneapolis, and that's
Okay.
where he's from.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I think certainly if you're writing books set in particular areas, then you would need to know them. Because
yeah.
as you say, if you've got somebody I say I edit for the 100th reader because 99 won't notice, but there'll always be one who does. And if you're
Mhm.
setting a book in, for instance, California, then if you've got a particular street in a particular town, and somebody lives there, and you've got a character turning left and then left again, they'll write saying, well, no, actually, that if you go left and left again, you're going the wrong way down a one-way street.
Yep.
So if you're basing something in fact, and for your purposes, because you're creating this whole world, as long as you don't have a character turning left and left again at the beginning, and then later on they're turning left and right
Yes.
for the
Yes.
same journey, then it's consistency. Then it's freeing, I think, being able to. I've done both. I've created my here we go, there we go, that one. That's based all around Northampton, where I used to live. And then the one below it, which is the follow-up, that's based in Hemel Hempstead and Tring, where I know really well. So they are areas I know, um, because I wrote the top one, the first one in a month. That was 115,000 in a month, and I wanted something easy to do,
Yeah.
and so it's a women's fiction, and my brother calls it my autobiography because she's at the time I was in my 30s, 5'10", wearing glasses with fluctuating weight, and so yes, it's all about me and my dating experiences, but not 30. I'm pleased to say not 31 in 31 days.
Well, that's
Exaggerated a bit.
it's kind of funny that you talk about that because I I love traveling. I love seeing what's over the next hill.
Mm.
Um, I haven't really made it out of the country yet, but I have lived and worked in 41 states of the United States.
Wow.
About the only place that I really haven't been is Washington and Oregon in the Pacific Northwest and
Right.
some of the smaller states up around New York. And I've been through there, been all the way up into Maine, but
Mm.
like Connecticut, Rhode Island, some of those I haven't been into.
Mm.
But I've done so many different things and met so many people that I can just reach in back into my memory and pick out a character.
Mm.
I mean, there's one guy that I can think of that lived in a town that we lived in about 8 or 9 years ago. This guy had the most colorful speech you've ever heard, and he was hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, one of them was shines like a diamond in a goat's butt. I mean, just, and I mean, he had thousands of those, and they were
Yeah.
hilarious.
Wow.
So,
See, the thing about that is I call it fiction fodder. It will all go in your brain, and you never know when you're going to need it.
and it may sit there for years, and you never think about it, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it just, hey, remember me?
Yeah. Or
So,
you have a conversation like this, and it comes back to you.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
it's really funny how memory works that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. It sounds like
I've enjoyed it.
one of your fur babies wants attention, so mine will be starting up soon
And
behind the door. So,
where we live, there are a lot of squirrels, a lot of birds, and they
okay,
bark at all of them.
everything. Right.
Yeah.
My dog's coming on to 13. He'll be 13 in a couple of weeks. And he's kind of lost, even in squirrels. Squirrels used to be smells, squirrels. So squirrels used to be his second thing. And now his eyesight's going a bit. So he either can't see them or doesn't fancy chasing them anymore.
Mine are about 2 years old, so they're still very, very
Still
active.
babies.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, Dennis. Thank you so much, and
You're
hopefully
welcome.
we'll chat again with an audience in the new year. Then
At
we can
any
talk.
time, I would love to come back. I
Thank you. Yeah,
thank you very much
absolutely.
for having me.
And then you're very welcome. And then every time you have a new book, so when the next ones come out, we'll have a chat about those. But
Okay.
next up will
I'd love
be
to.
Children of the Quill in the new year. Thank you very
Yes.
much. All right. Thank you.
So,
There we go.
good.
Thank you.